Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for joining us this morning or evening, whatever it may be, for where you happen to be, for this week's live event, Office Hours, as I am fond of calling it. This is your live event, so ask your questions or chit-chat amongst the folks on the channel. Hello there, Ronaldo. Thank you very much. I'm doing very, very well. Hello, Karen. Thank you for joining us this morning it's during dance class, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. JC's Radiant Ray, good day. And vocalists around the world. JC's Radiant Ray is acknowledging you. Welcome, everybody. Kamani Ellis, hello, and hello to you as well. Mandy Cummins, hello. Thank you for joining us. Singy Mix Singer Pants. Yo. At JC's Rainy Ray, at Singy Mix Singer Pants, Arson97, Arson97. Greetings. Thanks a lot from the Ukraine. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Welcome. Elizabeth Wilson, I am doing very well. Thank you for joining us. Andrew Curry, hello. And Maddie Hendricks, hello. Hey, everybody. All these salutations are lovely. It's lovely. Singing McSingerpants is saying hello to the vocalists and musicians. Hello. At Mandy Cummins, at me. Yes, my daughter's dance class. She's a competitive dancer, so we're here a lot. Ah, yes. What discipline specifically, if you don't mind my asking? I actually knew some like nationally ranked, I didn't even know there was such a thing, but like nationally ranked like country line dancers. They were, we met them hiking the John Muir Trail. Lovely, lovely folks, but I was like, really? I didn't know there was such a thing. Actually, it might have been competitive country ballroom style. Maybe it wasn't line dancing specifically. Hello, Janet Two-Way. Yes, Aras, actually, thanks a lot. You're very welcome. Bob, hello. We're waiting for you from a whistle register video so we can all see it. We're thinking about it. I was thinking about that a lot this week. At Singwise Vocals. AG Pizza. Thanks for your time, Jeff. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. Omar, hello from Texas. The Lone Star State. Welcome, Omar. Jer. Please correct me if that's, I'm not sure if that J is supposed to be soft, like a Jer, or if it's Jer. Please let me know, you know, do not allow me to mispronounce your name. Please correct me. Hi, Jeff, I have a question. My voice really hurts because I recently sang with my choir. What else can I do along with tea and warm-ups to fix the problem? One is identify what the problem is. You know, if it hurts, we need to evaluate what's going on, because if it really hurts, you can't carry on that way. The fatigue is just going to wear you down, and you know, I don't want to be like the doomsayer or anything like that, but you just don't want to go on again and again and again with that kind of pain. Can you give me a bit more info about what's going on? I mean, what were you singing that hurt so badly? And furthermore, would you clarify, like, did you lose your voice afterwards? Did it hurt the next day? Were you hoarse the next day? You know, give me a bit more background on that. Trash Bin, how are you? I'm doing quite well, thank you. Mrs. Webster, hello all. Singwise Vocals, at Mandy Cummins, at Singwise Vocals. Heidi Banker, hello everyone. David Walsh, good to see you. Cricothyroid and cricoarytenoid, chest and head voice, almost. Upper and lower registers and flipping the larynx concepts. Same thing in different words. Okay, so thyroarytenoid is the chest voice. Cricothyroid, head voice. Cricoarytenoid is another set. I'm digging deep. I was on my anatomy lessons. I've been looking through this a lot this past week. Just thinking about registration events, thinking about whistle tones and whistle register, and thinking about the operation of the voice. So cricoarytenoid, I wasn't entirely focused on that, but if I'm not mistaken, is yet another set of muscles that's in the general vicinity of the cricothyroid muscles. But thyroarytenoid, cricothyroid, chest, head, upper lower registers, flipping the larynx. Now, flipping the larynx concept, I'd have to look at the person, I'd have to look at the teaching that is using that term. Usually that term gets used in the initial stages of learning to sing from the chest voice to the head voice, or thyroarytenoid dominant singing to cricothyroid dominant singing. And it's using that language to denote the sensation of that transition when it's not very well developed. It can feel like it's flipping over, or like it's kind of getting, and again, this is another word that's usually used in that teaching is the break, where they talk about the break and you flip over the break. If you want to talk about tilting larynx, that is talking about the hyoid cartilage and how it gets rotated forward, because really, when the cricothyroid musculature engages, it's rotating the hyoid. The cricothyroid muscles get engaged. They rotate the hyoid cartilage, and that is what's attached to the vocal fold on one end and elongates it. Mandy Cummins. That'll be me. That's at Singwise Vocals, at Karen, because her daughter is a gymnast. I'm getting into it heavily now. Mrs. Webster, Jeff got a cool email from you. Want to talk about that here regarding the comments question? Oh, geez. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. I get like really tunnel visioned when I get into the chat. Yeah, I meant to mention that. So if you leave a comment in the comments of the videos, or if you have like a really cool question and we talk on Twitter, or if you send an email to me, you stand a pretty good chance of me responding back with a link. I've started a new, it seems weird to call it a live event because it's really more of a semi-live event. I'm gonna basically do it as much as I need to do it. So unlike this, where we can chat back and forth and you can put comments in the chat and we can go, all that kind of stuff. In this one, I don't have a chat enabled. Certainly you can still leave comments after the event is over. I made it a live event because there's a certain kind of stream of consciousness or energy that I feel when I'm answering questions in this format. And so rather than collect all these questions and then release a video the way I would normally, I'm doing them as live events. The other side of this too is that it does in fact allow me to get a URL link in advance. So like if I collected all the questions, I would then have to shoot the video and then go back to those questions and comments and Twitter things and all that kind of stuff to put the links to where the video would be found. With scheduling a live event, I can generate the live event in YouTube, grab the link, and then put it immediately with the comment, so they'll, the person in question, or perhaps even yourself, will know where to go to find my response. It also streamlines production as well. So I just realized that was probably a whole lot of the internal workings of YouTube that was entirely irrelevant to our conversation here, but there you go. Anyway, now I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, with this new mode, it does streamline production for me, so it's very, very quick and easy for me to set everything up and record my responses to the comments and questions and all that. One other thing too, which I thought about a little bit in the first video, was that if you normally block ads and things like that, I'm putting video suggestions and responses in the cards. We can no longer do annotations. So I'm putting them all in the cards, again, because it's really, really fast and easy, and I want to streamline the production of this as much as I possibly can so that I can respond in a timely fashion. That was part of the problem with typing all the responses. Is I'm a very fast typist, reasonably fast anyways. But I wanted to be able to respond more fully and also in as timely a fashion as I possibly could. So thank you, Mrs. Webster, for reminding me. At me, lyrical ballet, tap, and jazz. Oh, so sort of multidisciplined dancer. Fantastic. Elizabeth Wilson are still doing vocal training on YouTube. If that's a question of me, yes, absolutely. Mandy Cummins at Mrs. Webster, at Singwise Vocals, at Mandy Cummins. Ken Money Ellis, hey, Jeff, I recently started singing again, but every time I try to sing higher or put more effort into my voice, I end up cracking or breaking. What can I do? I'm 15, by the way. Okay. Kamani, if you are male, you are still, if your voice has changed, you're still really close to it, and that can sometimes take a little bit of time to settle down. But the thing that I'm mostly cued into here is put more effort. If you mean force, then I'm not surprised that you're cracking or breaking, because oftentimes that effort translates into thyroarytenoid heaviness. So too much muscle engagement with the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, your chest voice. And that imbalance will almost always result in cracking or breaking, or in the least worst case scenario, a registration event that is really, really noticeable. So at 15, you might have to be a little bit patient for things to settle down if you're a male vocalist. And I would circle the wagons, which is to say, kind of take a moment, make sure that you're using your voice carefully, evaluate your airflow so that you know that the voice is getting the appropriate amount of subglottic pressure, or airflow, or support, if you prefer, is a common way of referring to it. So that when you're approaching the zona di passaggio, you're coming at it with as balanced a mode of phonation as you are capable of producing at the moment. Again, at 15, it may be some time before things settle down for you. Tavan, Jeff, I was wondering what I can do to clarify my upper belts and tone as a baritone in the 4th octave. I get stuck around D or F. Well, honestly, I think the best thing to do would be to learn how to make a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio. In so doing, even if you choose to belt, and depending on where your secondo passaggio, if you're a sort of typical baritone with a secondo passaggio around D or E flat 4, then F natural is still okay. However, learning to make that smooth transition will have a lot, I would think would have a rather dramatic impact on your understanding of how your voice works in that range, and will give you a little bit more of a choice in terms of how you use your voice. So if you choose to belt, then you'll be able to choose more carefully just how much thyroarytenoid dominance you wish to maintain as you ascend beyond the secondo passaggio. Or if the song that you are singing is more suited to a smooth transition and using the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, which is commonly referred to as your head voice, then you can choose to do that. In either case, understanding how you move through the zona di passaggio, or the so-called mix range, and arrive above the secondo passaggio, or which is commonly referred to as the break, will only get better and better. In order to do that smooth transition, you have to have a really, really good, consistent airflow, or subglottic air pressure, and a really well-balanced use of the larynx in conjunction with said airflow. That, too, will have nothing but good effect for your overall tone quality, control, and, of course, what goes along with all of that, intonation. So that would be my suggestion to you. Depending on how you're working on things, that could be perhaps a little bit of a long road, but you know, being a musician, I think, in my opinion, is a lifetime kind of a thing. So, you know, may you live for a very, very long time and study voice as long as it suits you, and benefit from that study. Yeah, I hope that helps. Isaac William. Hello, how's it going? It's going quite well. I'm feeling I'm feeling somewhat whimsical this morning, but also quite energized. It might have been the French toast. It's a normal phenomenon for the voice to sound weaker when recorded rather than in your own head, but I dislike how thin and whiny it is, especially my mix. Resonance issue. Interesting question. Very interesting question. Okay, so I must admit, I take somewhat issue with some of the language in your question. You indicate it's a normal phenomenon for the voice to sound weaker when recorded rather than in your own head. I would amend that to say different. Because so much of how we perceive the sounds of things is subjective. So what you hear as weaker, another person may interpret in an entirely different way. So I would think about this as different. I don't know what your internal experience of the sound of your voice is versus recorded versus what you hear internally. But I'm reasonably certain it sounds different. But you perceive it as weaker. But I dislike how thin and whiny it is. Now, recordings don't lie. So, especially in my mix, that leads me to suspect that you're not actually getting into the zona de passaggio, or the mix range of your voice, if that's how you're using the word mix. The mix range across different vocal schools of thought or pedagogies is somewhat different. Some people refer to the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, so-called head voice, as mix. Others do not. The mix range in my studies is the zona de passaggio, the area between the primo passaggio and the secondo passaggio. This is the balancing act area of our voices. I often call it like a teeter-totter, if you're familiar with that, as a fulcrum. You kind of start in thyroarytenoid, and as you exit across the secondo passaggio, then you're in cricothyroid dominant. So, resonance issue, it could be, but it may just as easily be an airflow issue that's resulting in a resonance issue. It could also be a vowel alignment issue that's exacerbated by airflow, which is resulting in your resonance. Resonance, we often think of resonance as something we dial in or we fix, but resonance is a product of the components of our vocal studies. So we study airflow and engagement. We study vowel formation as it relates to proper vocal fold adduction or closure. The resonance, I'm paraphrasing here, resonance is something that we don't so much control as allow to occur. So when we talk about placements and thinking about placing things around, what we are really primarily adjusting in doing that is vocal fold adduction and weight of the musculature as it relates to the column of air beneath it that's flowing over the vocal folds. So if you're thin and whiny and the recording is showing that, then you're probably a bit, and I don't think that you're questioning that. But I would focus on balance before necessarily trying to look for a short fix on resonance or being forward or more back. Evaluate the 5 cardinal vowels in your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, your chest voice, and then move it into the zona de passaggio and ultimately above, so that you can see what the consistency of tone quality is. And if there are discrepancies, evaluate them critically. And by critical, I mean, when I sing from E to A, I sound okay. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but I guess I had the time, and so it worked out. You can always give me a shout. That was really silly. Anyways, it's that third cup of coffee and the French toast, I think, that's what did it. So evaluate that in the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. So you've sung from E to A and everything is going well, but when you go E to Ah or E to O, there is a dramatic shift in the tone quality. Vowels are not aligned. Evaluate it in the thyroarytenoid, in the chest voice, in a very comfortable area, and see if the alignment is appropriate. If so, move it again towards the zona de passaggio, but do it in stages. That was a really cool question. I know I've taken a lot of time with it. I hope that answers your question, or at least gives you some thoughts as to how you might proceed. This is probably a good time for me to mention that if I, for some reason, do not get to all of your questions, please consider copying and pasting them into the comments after the event ends, so that I can answer them, possibly in my new Singing Questions Answered semi-live event. Maybe that's what I should just refer to it as a semi-live event. The Bridge, hello. Mandy Cummins, hey Jeff, remember that issue I had and the therapy I mentioned to you yesterday? Yes. After a good night's sleep and more of that therapy, my voice is back to normal. Fantastic. Fantastic, Mandy Cummins. That is truly a tribute to your discipline and patience in your vocal studies. When we're not feeling 100%, it pays to be patient and disciplined. But I would argue that that's probably, just generally speaking, good advice. That's probably my, if I were to have a superpower, it's patience and discipline in the study and practice of things. I often think about this one bar of music I was working on. Now, admittedly, this is one bar doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but it was in 9/8, so it's it's 9 eighth notes in length, an eighth note longer than you would have in a bar of 4/4. For those of you who are familiar with that, and I needed to practice it, and I needed to fix it, and I sat down in the practice room. And I started, and I just started working on it, and when I felt satisfied, I left the practice room and realized that 2.5 hours had gone by. 9 eighth notes long, and like probably, if I remember correctly, there's at least 2 or 3 eighth rests in there. So, but the bar was fixed after that. There was no longer any problems with it. So well done, Mandy. Well done. Mrs. Webster, hail, hail. The gang is in fact, this is like, the gang is truly all here today. It's really fun. Singing makes singer pants. At Ger. Mandy Cummins, which is good because I have 2 back-to-back gigs this afternoon. Brava, brava. Nathaniel Montano, how can you get being nasal? Practice how. I know I just got done saying, like, don't focus on resonance, focus on vocal fold deduction. But there is one good way that you can really tune in the physical sensations of how these things feel. I'm very fond of this NG exercise, this and what you can do with this, because when you do that, you say hung, and the rear of the tongue lifts up and it closes the mouth off to airflow. So all the air and the sound is going through the sinus passages. But what you can do, and I suspect what's happening when you do this, is that you're slightly changing the adduction of the vocal fold and also slightly tensing different musculature in the soft tissue of the oral cavity. So you're slightly dampening things a little bit. But what you can do, I suspect, I would have to do some research on that to really, really vet that last comment. But what you can do is you can learn to change the physical sensations, and in so doing alter the resonances. So you can be very forward with this. And you can also be what one would say is very back. And you will notice when if you sing that and then release it to like an A or E, whatever vowel you wish is fine. And try to maintain that shape, then you will hear the tone with the relevant resonance. So if I sing and in that way you can really play around with how your tone is created. And if you wish, to be a little bit further back. Now, if you're really, really, really nasal and you can't do that, then you might have to spend a little bit of time with the nose pinch exercises. And those, the goal is to be able to pinch and release your nose without having the tone externally change. If you hear it change, you know that you've got too much airflow in the sinus passages, which again is a change in the adduction of the vocal fold. And I have to do a bit more reading on that. I don't want to misquote or misparaphrase what I've been studying about that recently. But in any case, that nose pinching exercise will really help inform you as to how much of the resonance is going that way. Now, if you do that and you find that the tone is changing, then your first task is to pinch the nose the entire time and you'll feel the vibrations, try to get those vibrations to go away. It'll feel like you're directing things back. Stick to the narrower vowels. I take that back. E and oo will probably be helpful in this regard. Oo and o. If E is just giving you no love, then maybe try oo and o a little bit. Stay in a very comfortable range of your voice. Get out of the zona de passaggio. Stay in your comfy chest. Maybe we should call it like armchair chest voice. You know, like just the absolute, totally most comfortable, because there aren't enough terms in vocal teaching yet, so I have to create armchair chest voice, which has absolutely no meaning outside this particular chat. But it's kind of fun to say. The most comfortable range of your voice. Retracted jer. So again, let me see. But you're fine, thank you. Jaer, like ja-er or ja-er. I'm cool either way. We were singing really high songs, but it didn't hurt at the moment. When I woke up the next day, I was only able to sing low, not really high. It feels a little weaker when I sing high. Yeah, so I saw a question about inflammation. That's possible. I'm sorry to keep on asking you questions, but the thing that you say that I find rather interesting is that you could only sing low the next day. You haven't mentioned whether or not you were hoarse or if it woke up the next day and it hurt. It didn't hurt at the moment. Oftentimes it doesn't. You see, what I'm wondering about is if your director vocalized you really, really well, then and if it's lower the next day, you may just not have vocalized into the range that you need to be in, and so you can get that discrepancy. And if it feels, now feeling a little weaker is different from sounding a little weaker. Often the internal experience can be very different from what is happening outside. But at the end of the day, if it hurt, it needs to be evaluated. It's quite likely you were not singing in a very balanced fashion, and that's why it ended up hurting the next day. If you were singing up there and you were, belting that whole time, however long that was, then it's not terribly surprising that you had a little bit of discomfort the next day. My advice is to perhaps have a look at some of the registration event videos, like the videos on my channel about singing over the secondo passaggio or singing over the break, or high notes for vocalists, things like that. And that goes over the technique on how to access the upper register of your voice. It will be some time to get that well implemented and so that it feels very comfortable and natural to do, but it'll stop you from hurting your voice like that. JC's rating rate, Mrs. Webster. The bridge, my secondo passaggio is E4, my lowest comfortable note is B2. Would you consider me a baritone? Probably. Probably. But maybe not. Maybe not. It depends. Making Fach determinations without hearing a voice is really not really possible. I mean, we can talk notes all day long and tendencies, but that E4 could easily change into an F4 if you're not maintaining really good vowel alignment below the secondo passaggio, much less in the zona de passaggio. B2, if I'm thinking correctly. B2, on the other hand, is not that as a comfortable low note is not terribly consistent with baritone registration events. You know, you'd probably get lumped into the baritenor category these days, but I'm not terribly fond of that as a designation, because usually what ends up happening when you get that designation is that the vocalist then later has to make sort of you're left telling the person that they're going to make some arbitrary choice about how to train. They're going to train as a baritone, they're going to train as a tenor, and how you choose to train will have a definitive impact on how you use your voice and all that. But making that designation without hearing the response of your voice, without listening to how it responds around B2, what is the vowel alignment in the chest voice range? How are you navigating the zona de passaggio and ultimately the secondo passaggio? What's the status of your airflow technique? Are you maintaining good appoggio? That alone may have a significant impact on how your voice responds around where you're quoting your secondo passaggio is right now, and whether or not it remains consistent. So yeah, yeah, in some respects that kind of adheres to that, but I wouldn't sign off on it personally. Michael Officer, thank you so much for your new beginner's baritone warm-ups and clever exercises. You're very welcome. I think it was a year or two ago I said, I really need to do more with the beginner, and I wished I would have called that fundamental vocal technique rather than beginner technique, but whatever. This year I'm really going to do that. I'm really going to make a concerted effort, and the fundamental technique and beginner videos are part of my shooting calendar, if you will. So I'm going to be doing that very consistently. At Singwise Vocals, Isaac William, also my vocal coach is having me pull my chest up to get more volume, which is causing a raised larynx and all sorts of tension. He's a classical teacher. Is this common? It's not how I sing at home. Oh, I've heard of... It's not for me to say what the motivation is for your instructor. What I will say is that historically, to my knowledge, there is only one school of voice that ever advocated for a raised laryngeal position, a raised larynx. The tension is not desirable as far as I'm concerned, and that this individual is a classical teacher I find somewhat confusing because the internationally recognized standard for upper register phonation is to make smooth transitions through the registration events. So if he's a classical teacher, presumably he would have adopted that and be training you to do that. So I don't know. I'm sorry, but if it's her, which is causing a raised larynx tension. So is it common? Not to my knowledge. It's not how I sing at home. I think that's probably good. I would maybe just ask some questions. Maybe do a bit of reading to try to understand what's going on a little bit better. You know, I think back to one lesson that I had with a really well-known vocal coach, and I must admit one whom I really admire and I really like. I always loved my lessons with him, and he had me doing something which is the only time that I ever lost my voice from a voice lesson. And I couldn't even count the number of lessons I have received throughout my life. It's the only time I ever lost my voice because of a singing lesson that I received. And I have to assume that I just missed the point. I didn't really understand what he was trying to teach me. I wasn't getting it. I wasn't doing it properly. And I, looking back on it, wish I would have said, hey, this is starting to hurt. What am I doing wrong? Or can you help me? Should it hurt? If it's supposed to hurt, I think I want to stop, because that doesn't really work for me. Or can you help me understand what I'm supposed to be doing here? So yeah, I might just do, and try to be I would try to be as non-confrontational, as diplomatic as possible in this. Because the last thing we want to do is put this individual on their back heel, as one might say, like put them on the defensive. We just want to ask and try to understand what the point is and how this is supposed to work, so that you can get the benefits of it and hopefully not deal with all that tension. Mandy Cummins, I have a question. You know how your head gets stuffy and your ears pop when you have sinus issues. Any tips for singing when your voice is fine but your ears are blocked up? No, that is really, really not fun at all. Goodness. That is really, really not fun. It reminds me a lot. It reminds me somewhat of when I'm singing with earplugs, which if the monitors are good, it can be okay. If the monitors are bad, it can be incredibly difficult. And that's one of those situations where, unfortunately, you're kind of left trusting that it's coming out sounding correct, like you're coming out in tune and you're sounding good. Usually, in my personal experience, when I've got that occlusion happening with my ear, I'm hearing too much of the bone conductivity and the inner ear, inner ear picking up of the vibrations inside the oral cavity, and so it has that kind of like you've got your ears plugged, that sort of a sound. I'm also quite lucky. I don't have a lot of sinus issues or things like that. I don't deal with these things all that much. Unfortunately, I don't know how practical my suggestions are. One, hopefully you've done your homework. Hopefully you've maintained a really, really good practice regimen. If you are prone to these things, then in part plan ahead. Make sure that you're planning, that you're doing your practices regularly and comprehensively. So you're covering the repertoire you need to cover, and you may also consider prepping the repertoire so that it primarily falls in ranges that are a little bit more thyroarytenoid dominant than into the upper register. While that blocked ear is problematic in the chest voice range or thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, in my personal experience, it's far worse in the zona di passaggio and above the secondo passaggio. And those ranges of the voice are typically where, if we have those kinds of distractions with the ears and things like that, that we lose proper phonation. We lose the ability to sing well there. And it can be some time before you can kind of trust fall that one out, like trust that it's going to be right and actually sing it correctly. So you may consider practicing some of your material in keys that only goes slightly into the zona di passaggio, or only goes just to the secondo passaggio, or just slightly above it. In other words, lower the keys so that you're primarily in your chest voice, which typically doesn't seem to sound as different when those kinds of things are happening than the upper register does. Karina Chen, hello. I have better tone than last year, but still would like to have cleaner and cleaner tone, less breathy tone. Any exercises for that? Absolutely. I mean, in some respects, the entire channel is devoted to that. But if you're breathy, then you're not adducting the vocal folds entirely efficiently. You may consider some short note exercises. Maybe, and Karina, I know you've been singing for a long time, but if I'm not mistaken, you've also studied for some time as well too. So please take this in the way that it is intended, which is purely to try to help, which is that you might consider doing some of the beginning studies exercises that focus on short vowel sounds. And perhaps I ought to include that as a precursor to some of the more melismatic studies and some of the standard warm-ups that I do. But in truth, if you're breathy throughout your vocal ranges, throughout your tessitura, then you could very much benefit from a little bit of adduction practice in the just very, very comfortable, armchair chest voice range of your voice. I'm probably gonna end up starting to use that, and I'm gonna have to be responsible for creating another obtuse vocal pedagogical term. Yeah. Singy McSinger Pants. I'd be happy to answer medical questions since that is so cool. That is so cool. I have waited for the day to have a doctor or someone like that. That is very cool. I may kind of things if stuff like that comes up. Fantastic. Can you tell us more, Singy McSinger Pants? Singwise vocals at Mrs. Webster. Mrs. Webster at Mandy Cummins. Caps Entertainment at Singwise. Karina Chen. Yeah, Caps, welcome. I don't recall seeing your user ID before. Welcome to the live event. Use an @ symbol, and I'll just say @ and move on. At Caps Entertainment, AG, please explain twang and cry. Now, Karina, that's interesting because in light of your previous question, I am interpreting twang and cry as means by which to get more vocal fold adduction. And they are hyperglottic ways of using the voice to close the vocal fold, to get it to adduct. They also they can also sometimes employ a little bit of vocal fry, like a ooey, 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 that kind of a sound. If you really find that you cannot get a well-adducted tone, then that might be something to practice a little bit. But I would highly recommend you stick to really, really small doses of that, and quickly move back to more neutral modes of phonation, more neutral ways of singing. Because the vocal fry and the hyperglottic, the tension in the vocal folds in doing that, we want to get the benefits without creating a habit where we're always really squeezing the vocal fold that way. So yeah, at Caps Entertainment, AGB. When singing American songs, would it be better being British to sing with my own accent? Jamiroquai dance. Well, as an American, we do love the British accent. It's true. Having lived in Britain for 4 years, I have developed a certain immunity to it at this point, which I can tell you. When I first moved to England, it was incredibly difficult for me to teach. Because in being in the room with people who had the British accents, I always felt like I had real crises of faith about my teaching and what I understood about the voice. After a little while, it was fine, and I got over it. I would just be you. You know, there's only one you in this whole wide world. Just be you. I mean, I can only speak for myself in this regard, but that's who I want to hear. I want to hear you. I want to hear you sing the songs. I don't want to hear some facade. So you be you, and you will find that the people who identify with that and love it will find you and listen to you. At Singing Mixed Singer Pants. Warm. Heidi Banker, how did it go, Mrs. Webster? I am far, far behind. I have no idea how far behind I was. At Singwise Vocals, at Mandy Cummins, at Mandy. I had surgery 2 years ago. I lose my voice completely a few months ago. Some Ukrainian musicians advised me some Soviet exercises for voice, pushed me up and made some progress. Cool. Later, friends of mine sent your YouTube channel to me, and your exercise, everything's become better and better. Brilliant. Wonderful, wonderful. I hope that you are recovered or are recovering well, and I'm really, really glad that the channel is helping you along that way. Brilliant. Chikandi. Hi Jeff, how are you? I'm doing very well. Do you have any video about how to sing in head voice with exercises to apply to a song? And how to have a powerful voice. Back to front, if you want power, work on balance. My entire channel is basically devoted to balance. So that will come along with it. You know, I don't know if I've done that exactly. I don't know if I've done a video precisely as you have talked about and delineated the process by which I incorporate that if it's problematic. I will do so. Thank you for asking. Hello, Karen, Mrs. Webster, break legs, Mandy. 2 gigs in one day. Janet 2A, hello, Karina. Singing Mixed Singer Pants. Jair, twang is a great way to get volume without vocal string. Ready Player One, hey Jeff, last week your stream was ending just as I tuned in. Having trouble with lip trills. I noticed the tempo of your trills is a lot slower than my trills, and I feel like I'm straining. Any ideas? If you mean the actual flat, I'm going to have to go a little quicker here. I'm going to try and get as many of these questions as possible. If I do not get to you, please consider copying and pasting your question into the comments of this video, and I will respond as soon as I can. If you're getting something from your lip trill that's like that, and you're probably not getting good vocal fold deduction. Is a reasonably good balanced vocal fold deduction. So in short, if you haven't tried my AAA method on the website, I go through a pretty slow and delineated process to establish the lip trill. In your case, since you're doing it, you may only just have to make a few adjustments to get a little bit better reduction, and that should help with a lot of things, quite frankly. So perhaps consider trying that. You just have to sign up for the email list, and then you'll get the passwords to the method. The bridge, do you think squealo comes from mask resonance or the vocal folds themselves? In my understanding of squealo, it is talking about the efficiency of adduction of the vocal folds, so vocal folds themselves. Jiao, Jeff, how to put more chest in the mix to sound more resonant on my belts? Well, if you're mixing, then you're not belting. And I advocate a well-balanced mode of phonation throughout, at the very least, until you can do everything smoothly, and then you can evaluate whether or not you truly need to belt. But the phrasing of your question, I find somewhat contradictory. So I would just evaluate airflow and evaluate vowel alignment, particularly in the zona de passaggio. Work towards a balanced mode of phonation. And then if you find that you want to lean it slightly more towards your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, then that'll be a fairly easy matter to accomplish. You'll just increase breath energy a little bit. There'll be a little increase in vocal fold engagement, and you'll probably achieve what you're looking for. At Karina, Caps Entertainment, can I do an example of singing in head voice? Why not? So, hey, 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 hey. That's my, so those scales started in my chest voice. Technically, they started in my zona di passaggio. So, but it's still my chest voice. And then I sang across the secondo passaggio into my head voice and then back down. Mrs. Webster at Mandy. Karina Chen hurried out of the shower. That's cool. Singing McSinger Bands, can you explain the Josh Groban sound when he sings Les Miserables, Bring Him Home? I think he's using falsetto at times, but it's hard to tell. I'd have to listen to it. So, singing McSinger Bands, I would love to do that. Would you consider sending an email to me to remind me through jeffrolka.com? I hate to ask, but that's a guarantee that it'll get done, quite frankly. My lists of things to do have exploded somewhat, but email is a very, very, very reliable way to get those sorts of things to happen. At Mrs. Webster, Isaac William, I believe it's thin because of over-twanging. Only found my mix a week and a half ago. I hear it's common to twang too much, particularly in R&B. Agreed. Karina Chen, I feel like I'm a character from Alice in Wonderland. I'm late. I'm late. I know. You need he had like a big watch, like a pocket watch, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. At Singing Miss Singer Pants. Laughing out loud. Ha, thanks, Jeff, for the Dr. Seuss moments. Rhyming makes it easier to remember. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. Not so different from me at Karina. Maddie Hendricks, I had a wonderful experience at the Nat student auditions yesterday. I did not make it past the first round, but really learned a lot from the feedback I got and seeing the final concert that night. Brilliant. Wonderful, Maddie. Wonderful. One of these days I'm going to make it to some of these Nats functions. It sounds like a lot of fun. And I miss going to conferences and things like that. I used to love going to conferences many, many moons ago. Yes, it's the vowels. Beer Master. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, Beer Master. Welcome back. One of my personal favorite user IDs. I'm glad you're finding the warm-ups useful. Thank you for watching. Singing McSinger Pants at Mandy Cummins. Jeff, your superpower would also be your gift of teaching. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate that. David Walsh, do you think singers with backgrounds in horn or other wind instruments have breathing advantage over the other singers? Being a musician, any instrument seems advantage for singers. The musical training and the discipline of it, I think, is, as a saxophone player, the breathing instruction I received, even at the university level, is nothing compared to what I learned as a vocalist studying airflow and engagement, particularly as it relates to the Apogeo birth management system. If anything, my breathing training as a vocalist has helped my saxophone playing, if you can believe that. At Maddie Hendricks, agreed, by the way. JC's rating array, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. Jody, hey Jeff, you passed the test. You may try some rapping next. Thank you, thank you. Oh, FYI, you know, speaking of the singing questions answered, which, by the way, in the first one got double recorded because of a YouTube snafu. If anyone thinks of like a better title for that, I am all ears. I got a really, really interesting question from an Austrian rap artist regarding vocalizations and breathing and stuff like that for their raps. So I'm going to dive into that in one of those answering things. At JC Radiant Ray, Caps Entertainment, yes, the channel is loaded with exercises for head to chest voice and vice versa. I mean, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. I think, in fact, I have a high note technique playlist. If you look on the playlists for the channel, and I do realize that there's becoming quite a bit more of the playlists because I've been creating them more and more frequently, putting collections of videos together as the needs arise. If you cannot find it, just send an email to me via jeffrolka.com and I can send you the link to the playlist. It's easy peasy. And for that matter, I can send you a few links to some of those videos. Nailed it. Brilliant. At Maddie Hendricks, nose pinch exercises. Yeah, Heidi, those are really cool. They were, speaking for myself, they were very, very beneficial. They were a very beneficial way to start generating awareness of how soft tissues were vibrating and impacting the tone of my voice. Really, really beneficial. AJ. Got it. AJ. I will call you AJ. Janet 2A. Maddie. At Janet 2A. Is it good I can start head voice just below middle C? Caps Entertainment. If you're a lyric tenor, well, I mean, okay, so if you can do your head voice down that low, that's cool. However, I would not necessarily make that the place that I should. I mean, that's not for a lyric tenor. That would not be considered a well-balanced point of transition for the secondo passaggio. For a lyric tenor, it should be, G above middle C, G sharp above middle C, would be the general area where we would expect that transition to occur. The bridge about your lesson in which you lost your voice, Jeff. Isn't it the teacher's task to see that you're straining, having a problem from your sound? Well, yeah, kind of, but I mean, it's a group effort here. I mean, and furthermore, in the one that I lost my voice, I was sick. I didn't strain. I just had a cold, and I thought it would be a good time to show you what that might look like, and when it's a good time to take some time off. If you're straining and having problems, I would hope that your teacher would see that and bring it to your attention. If they're not, if they're not, and you're really straining and you're having problems, but they're not addressing it, I might ask why. They may not realize it, or they might be looking for something else. I don't know what their motivation. This reminds me of the question from earlier, a little bit. I cannot speak to the motivations of your teacher, or if you're working with a teacher. I don't know that you are, but sometimes instructors aren't necessarily as forthcoming with their motivations. I mean, I don't know. There's lots of different ways to approach this. So you might advocate for yourself and ask, like, hey, this is really hurting me. What's going on? Oh, I see. Oh, goodness me. You're talking about the lesson that I was talking about with the teacher, not the video I made. Okay, so right. The thing is that I wasn't strained. There was probably no outward appearance. There was probably no outward appearance of strain. When you, and this is, I'm not suggesting that this is, again, just take this in the way that it's meant, which is I'm not suggesting that, I don't know what your level of training is, but when you've achieved a certain level of training in singing, just like anything else, the outward appearance can always look as if it's purely casual and easy. And so I was already teaching lessons, when I was receiving this lesson. I love taking lessons. I love continuing my studies. I would like to start my studies again and start receiving lessons again soon if I can. But the thing is that there was probably no outward appearance of any kind that I was straining. And the thing is that we were doing this glottal attack exercise, and I believe that what he was trying to teach me was how to do a glottal attack, but from a more balanced standpoint. And I just wasn't getting it. I just wasn't getting it at all. What might have been nice is if he had checked in and said, hey, like, how does that feel? Is it hurting? Anything like that. In my teaching, I frequently ask that question. That lets me know whether or not, we're doing things correctly and that we're understanding things. I see what you're saying. I apologize for the roundabout way of getting to that. I was thinking about a video I did ages ago. And trying to think about it from your perspective as well instead of my own. But I see what you're meaning now. So yeah, but still, like I might have advocated for myself in that regard and said, hey, this is hurting. That, that definitely, falls on me. And to that I would add, like, let that be a bit of a lesson for all of us, that if we're working with an instructor and something is hurting or not feeling right, to just say, hey, like, can we talk about this for a sec, and move on from there. Folks, I'm so sorry. I realize I've gotten horribly, horribly behind. Heidi, I love this chat too. So folks, I can see that there's a lot of ats, so you guys are talking amongst yourselves, which is awesome. If you want to continue that conversation, you can always go over to Facebook, A Global Voice. And you can keep on chatting. Hello from Bay Farm Island. Nice to see, thank you for saying hello. You know what, actually, it seems like the only, question I didn't get is Torian. I have a problem with hitting F4 to A4, but only on a good day, which is very rare for me. I think I'm a bass baritone, but I have so much trouble with my middle register. Any advice? Interesting question. So yeah, I think I've got everybody else. Okay, so what I'm kind of cluing into here is the word hitting. If you're thinking about like hitting these notes, then one, I'm getting like this connotation of force, and I'm also getting a connotation of concept where it's short in duration. Above the secondo passaggio, if we try to just pointillistically hit a note, like we're gonna, pop it out, there's so many factors between appropriateness of subglottic air pressure, proper vocal fold deduction, proper vocal fold elongation based upon cricothyroid dominant singing voice and the rotation of the hyoid cartilage. Like there's all these different things that can go wrong in that short duration of a note. Start by thinking about singing through these pitches. That being said, of course, the registration event exercises I have, the early ones, are very pointillistic, but they're also not trying to be balanced in any way. So that's the logic behind there. And also, I would perhaps say a little bit, if you truly are a bass baritone, then I would start those, I wouldn't go beyond G4 probably, because when you start getting it to A4, if you are a bass baritone, then you're getting on to the next registration event, and that's going to complicate matters. So stay G4, do your exercises from G4 to maybe E4. I know it's a very narrow range, but do one octave arpeggios. You. You can really hear the change in tone in my voice. I'm doing that intentionally to know that I am using my cricothyroid dominant singing voice, and that will help you be more consistent. This will probably help you align your vowels in the middle register. And if by middle register you're meaning the zona di passaggio, the area between the primo passaggio and the secondo passaggio, oftentimes it's like you have to plan carefully when you're going to start working on upper register stuff. I like to wait as long as I can with clients, because if we get too much, if we don't get quite enough consistency of alignment in the zona di passaggio, then like the upper register is just, it takes like 5 times as long, and it's super frustrating, and it just doesn't work right. But it doesn't have to be perfect before you start that practice, in my opinion. Folks, I gotta go. Thank you so much. What a wonderful live event. Thank you for watching. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. Hopefully we'll see you here, or in the comments, or on Twitter, or on Facebook, or here next week. Bye.